All right, you guys, I want to show you coil method. Coil method to me is a little bit different than I think it maybe what you've heard of, or possibly what another ceramics teacher might teach you. For me, what I want you to grasp from coil method and the concept of it is being able to proficiently connect multiple pieces of clay together to create a final piece. How a coil looks, and I think oftentimes students get stuck in their head that a coil has to be snake-like. Yes, that is a type of coil, and I'll show you how to roll that. To me, that's your most basic coil. That's kind of the standard coil, but there's lots of ways that you can go deviate from that with your building of the coil method. It's not just doing a standard coil. You can do other items. But I'll start out by showing you how I like to and how a lot of students find success in rolling a basic coil and how I can successfully go about that. And then I'll show you some other variants or other options. So I'm gonna start out with a small amount of clay, about 1 pound. I've cut it off, I've already pre-wedged this. What I want to do to initially start my coil work is, doesn't matter how much clay I'm using, but get this into a shape. So I'm getting it into a pickle or a sausage shape. Other thing when I'm working with coils is I always want to make sure I have my water with me. So I'm adding a little bit of water so I'm not getting too dry. Big thing for me with coil when I'm rolling my coils, I don't want to roll my entire hand. When I'm rolling out this coil, if I go my entire hand, that's when I notice students tend to get a very flat coil, or it tends to start flopping on them. I like to keep it only with my fingers, and as I roll my coil, I'm gonna start with my fingers together, and then I'm gonna spread them out as I go. As this coil begins to spread and get longer, then I'm going to move around my coiling, and I'll kind of show you what I mean from that. I'm not doing a ton of pressure. I think a lot of times when students get flat coils or squared coils, it's because they're applying too much pressure when they're rolling. I'm doing it very light, starting in, moving out. Again, I'm only going the length of my fingers and coming back. And then as you can see, this coil's beginning to widen out. I'm gonna start moving to different areas. Again, light pressure, I'm trying to keep it consistent. Adding a little bit of water, especially if I see my coil start to crack on me. But you can see out of a small amount of clay, I can start to get a very large coil. I'm gonna break this off just so you guys can see a little bit better with my smaller coil. When I'm coiling, think about how thick do I wanna go? Think about a roll-on thickness. As I start to get 1/2 inch or bigger, I'm gonna start running into problems of, is my piece completely bone dry? Will it blow up in the kiln? Now, reason I like to move around and not stay in the same place, I'll show you an example. If I stay in the same place and do this same process, you'll notice I start to get these bevels or finger marks in the coil. That can be kind of cool if that's what you're intending to do and you're gonna match that up almost like a puzzle piece with your coil that you stack on top of it. That can be a neat way to do it, but most often you're gonna wanna try to get a good even coil. And you can see by my just fingers, starting in, spreading out, just doing fingers, I'm getting a good coil. So I'm gonna set this aside. Now what do I do with this coil when I'm wanting to create my piece? I want to have a base to my coil. So whether I hand slab, whether I use the slab roller, whether you use just a rolling pin, that's up to you. I'm going to slab a base anywhere, I would say 3/8 inch to 1/4 inch. You can go around there. That's going to be my base of my piece. I want to start with this. Some students in the past have gone with a coil base. The risk of that is that's a lot of different shrinking rates and you can get cracks from it in the final. If you're planning on wanting to put a liquid into this piece, it's not going to work very well. So from here I can do 2 options. I can either have some kind of form, whether that's a can, using one of the templates to create a shape, or I might start with a base of, I want to do more organic shapes. So I'm just going to do a random organic shaped cut. This becomes my base. Then the important part of coil method, scoring and slipping. When you're building up coils, it's a little bit different than when I'm attaching a horn or an eyeball or a handle to my mug. I want to use good actual slip for those attachments. When I'm building up and I can use the weight of my piece with my coils and it's all the same wetness of clay, I can go ahead and just use my water as my slip, but I want to make sure that I'm scoring and slipping what I'm attaching to and what I'm attaching. Now when we're scoring, what you want to think of is crosshatch pattern. I will see students, and there's lots of tools that you can use for this, you guys. Students will use their different carving tools. The one that I like to use the best is our rake tool. You saw it just goes through very clean and quick. You can also use a serrated rib. Sometimes that works very well. A lot of students like to use a needle tool. If you're using a needle tool or you're scoring one, where I see students get into error is they think that this is proper scoring. That's not beating it up enough. Treat scoring and slipping like this. Imagine my two hands are pieces of clay. If I just push them together, as they dry, they're going to shrink and separate and fall right off. By scoring them, I'm opening them up, I'm attaching, and as they shrink, they're still going to hold and make a solid bond. So I want to make sure that when I'm scoring it, I'm ripping it up good. So I'm not going to take this whole coil on my piece and just start coiling up like a poop emoji. Stay away from that. Do small pieces at a time. You might not have this big of a coil. You might only have, let's say, this range. That's fine. I'm going to use this, and again, I'm going to score what I'm attaching. I already scored what I'm attaching it to. Went one direction, now I'm cross-hatching in the other direction. Then I'm going to use my water, and just on my finger, I'm going to apply it to all of it. A brush works really well for this. If you just have a brush that you can add to it, but finger works just fine. Then I'm going to follow that base form all the way around, firmly pressing. Begin to shape my piece. For this extra gap, I'm just going to get a next piece and kind of pre-measure it, making sure again that I'm scoring and slipping everything that I'm attaching. Now, small seams like that, whether it's just with your fingers that I'm sliding it in or with a wooden tool, your wooden tool works very nice, that I can use the end of it to help seam that a little better. And I'm going to continue this process, just repeating over and over again to build the height of my piece or the form of my piece. As you're making coils and creating your piece, don't think that, hey, I'm just going to roll out 100 coils and that's going to be good and then I'll stack them all together. You only want to roll out the amount of coils that you feel like you can get through in that sitting. So you kind of need to judge that. So don't make a bunch, because you'll come back the next time to that sitting and your coils that you rolled out and set aside, doesn't matter how well you bag them, they will dry out and you won't be able to bend them, or they'll break when you try to bend them the next time. This is okay because I can rescore this, rehydrate this a little bit and keep stacking up. So I can progressively build my piece up. Choices of, as I build the next layer, it's up to you whether you want to smooth out the piece. Sometimes I will give you the criteria of, if you were charged with making 2 coil pieces, I'll say one of them needs to have the coils visible. That means one of them you could smooth out the coils if you want. And I'll show you some examples of coil pieces at the end of this video. But just to give you the idea of, if I've built up a second layer of my coil piece, let's say I wanted to leave the outside, I want to be able to see my coil work, But the inside I want to smooth out. Let's say it'll help with me having liquid in here. I want to use this as a planter, so I want to be able to put water to water my plant. With your wooden tool, and there's many tools that you can use. Some of your different carving tools work well. I like my wooden tool for it. I'm just going to use this to seam those coils. Now don't worry about all the marks and stuff. You can smooth that out with your finger, with your sponge. This is just helping make this watertight, and it also firms up my coil work. Same process as if, hey, I'm building this vase, or I'm building a form, but I don't want to see the coil work on the outside. I'm just using the method to create that form. Every couple of coil layers, you might go 2, you might go 3, I'm going to smooth it out. Don't go 10 coils high and then come back the next sitting and think that you're going to smooth it out real well. It's better to do it when your clay's at this consistency. And again, don't worry about the marks. I can smooth that out with finger. I can do touch-up stuff with my rib, with my sponge, but I would keep building this up, smoothing out if I so choose to. So that's basic coils. Other options of what I can do with coils and coil method. Some of you may like to go a square route, where I want my coil more rectangular. Again, I'm going to slab out my clay. One way in which I can do this is once I've gotten my slab, I feel like I'm pretty even thickness, I can square off my clay. And then I'm going to use a ruler. It doesn't matter what measurement, as long as I keep it the same as what I'm doing on both ends. And then I can just use my ruler to line up those marks, and now I have a squared off piece. And then I can go in and I'm going to, again, keeping the same measurement regardless of what that is, I'm going to go in and make those ticks on each side. And I'll kind of show you the purpose for this in a sec. Then this makes it real easy to, I'm just lining up my tick marks. And now I've got these same width, more squared off coils. Now, even on my coil piece, let's say I started with, let's go back to that coil piece we were working on where we started with the circular coils. I can switch up and go more rectangulars, or even with let me show you another option you can do with them that's kind of fun sometimes. Is I'm going to actually skip a spot in my form. And then when I come on with the next one, and just for time purposes, I would score and slip where I'm going to attach it. I'm going to go right over the top of that and keep building up, so I can leave a visual gap in there to use some space. I can play with that positive and negative space with my piece. You could also, hey, I'm going to, in that section, instead of leaving that space, I'm just going to roll couple small balls in my hand. Again, with these, I would score and slip, but maybe I want to add these into that little section. And I can kind of give you a visual of that. So that can be part of, hey, I'm going to disperse items like that. Other coils I can work with. Circular or swirling, where I would just do almost like if you were, imagine doing a coil little snail, but I want to do a small swirl. That I could attach to my piece. Again, scoring and slipping, we're always doing that. And then I could add my new layer on top, but just to give you the visual idea and concept of what you could keep going to. So a lot of directions you can go. You'll see in some of the examples that I give or show some past student examples how they've used balls to create the entire piece. They've used bricks to create the entire piece. A lot of routes you can go. They used completely different shaped coils. I might use all these different scraps and see how I can puzzle piece them together to create that coil. So a lot of different directions you can go. The square one might, hey, I want to build this form, but I want to keep all my pieces the same thickness, or try my best to, so my walls are the same thickness. That slab method with the ruler I showed you is a great way to go about it. Again, these are just a few of the options, not the only options. That'll give you a good idea of different routes that you can go with it.